All right, we're both kind of having somewhat connection problems like all day, so you may have to bear with us from time to time, but hopefully we'll be okay.
Cue the little screen that says technical difficulties.
Yeah. As far as these two go, this is one I kind of debated on for a while because I think I've only done the pairing up a live action movie with an animated movie once before when I did Shrek and The Princess Bride. But this one just kind of stayed in the back of my head, and then I actually saw later that apparently it's been, I don't know if anything's ever been confirmed, but it's been questioned before if the creators of Monsters Inc. found inspiration from Little Monsters because their concepts are that similar. But obviously usually we go from one to the other, and even though Monsters Inc. is over a decade newer, I figured we'd start with Monsters Inc. and then go into Little Monsters because just to give you a heads up, Little Monsters is going to take us to some dark places with some of the observations I have here. So I figure
if you really want to feel old, Monsters Inc. is over a decade older than Little Monsters, and Monsters Inc. is almost 2 decades old.
Yeah, I remember. I'm pretty sure I was in 5th grade when Monsters Inc. came out, which feels like forever ago. And also, I think that's actually the first thing I want to go into, because has your opinion of Monsters Inc. ever changed over time, for better or worse?
Not really.
Because I had a troubling time relatively recently. Actually, this is getting farther and farther away from recently. It was 2012 when they were still doing the 3D re-releases. Remember that era?
Yeah.
This was like the last one, or like one of the last ones before they gave up. And when I saw the 3D re-release of Monsters Inc. like 11 years after it came out, I didn't feel like into it because it had been a little bit since I had seen it, and it was like, I don't know if it was the humor. I'm not saying my opinion stayed this way forever because I've watched it since then, of course. But at that particular time, it was like, it seemed much more childish than I remembered, because Pixar movies are often known for their maturity despite the kind of demographic they tend to go towards. But how Pixar is known for being like for all ages and having that sort of maturity underlying, if not in the foreground. And while there's certainly profound moments in it, it just feels much more like slapstick driven than other Pixar movies. Do you get that vibe? And not that slapstick is just automatically a bad thing, but I mean, when you look at what Pixar is known for, it kind of felt kind of lesser on the totem pole to me that particular time.
I think Monsters Inc. would probably be viewed as Pixar's most kiddie movie if they hadn't made the Cars series.
Yeah. But yeah, but in retrospect, I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad, but I do feel like it's a little less maybe universal, I guess. But that's only like it still fits that bill. This is really just like in comparison to the other Pixar movies, most of the other Pixar movies, where it doesn't quite have those really weighty moments in that way. I mean, certainly it's got tear-jerker moments, but like the weight of the stuff that Pixar has gone into before and after.
I think you can almost make that argument with Disney too, because Disney brought us Beauty and the Beast, and then 11 years later, it brought us Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah, Lilo and Stitch can get pretty heavy, but yeah, as far as comparing it to something like Beauty and the Beast, I see exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Beauty and the Beast is like, it's the only animated movie to ever be nominated for Best Picture when there was only 5 nominees. And Beauty and the Beast went head to head with Silence of the fucking Lambs.
and JFK.
Yeah.
But there is also talking about it in comparison to some of we're kind of talking about the Renaissance era, but if you want to go all the way back to the classic era,
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily like the 40s, but like the 60s era, do you kind of get that vibe from like the opening of Monsters Inc., like the little animated opening when it shows the title?
Yeah.
Sort of gives me vibes of like the 101 Dalmatians opening kind of comes to mind.
I don't know why, but for some reason I think of Sword in the Stone too.
Yeah. And like they were it kind of seems like and it's weird to go on this because like the opening's only like 10 seconds long. Like it's just the title.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a full-on credit sequence like the Sword in the Stone or 101 Dalmatians, but it just felt like in that 10 seconds it was that vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go into it like that, and almost kind of imagining if this was from that era,
I kind of, I
what it would
kind of feel like Sword in the Stone and 101 Dalmatians looked at like the opening title sequence for Doctor No, and they were like, "Yep, we could do that."
be. Yeah, I think 101 Dalmatians does predate Doctor No by a year, but I get what you're going for.
Maybe, maybe the James Bond producers watched 101 Dalmatians. They're like, "Yep, let's do that."
Yeah, I could,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously Disney was very influential in its particular era. So if it was inspiring stuff even like that, I wouldn't be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you come to think of it? What do you think about the animation altogether? Because there's something I wasn't really thinking about until kind of recently. It's something that I almost felt like I was kind of taking for granted, and then just like it kind of sent me down this rabbit hole of thought of like, that's really impressive as far as the animation goes.
Is it the room with doors?
No, but that's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because there's always those big sort of set pieces in Disney movies that you think about, like the inside of Big Ben in The Great Mouse Detective, or the Stampede in The Lion King, or something like that. And I do feel like the door rooms, or the whatever you call that place,
Going
has
back,
that.
going back to another movie that we already referenced, I feel like in a not action sequency kind of way, I feel like the ballroom scene in Beauty and the Beast feels big like that.
Yeah, something I always mention that I love is something that I've always carried through for that movie is Beast's library has always been a place that, like, those fictional places in movies where you're like, oh my god, I would love to go there.
Mm-hmm.
That's me with Beast's library.
Yeah. There's a lot of like epic stuff like that in Disney movies. Like a couple weeks ago, we were watching The Little Mermaid. The climax of The Little Mermaid feels freaking epic.
Yeah. And when I brought this up, I was going much more small scale.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we can be really impressed by all this really big stuff. But honestly, as far as animation goes, what Monsters Inc.'s biggest accomplishment probably is.
Hmm.
I said we're so used to him as a character by now that we probably don't even think about it. And he's literally a household name. Like that's how familiar we are with him, to where we may not even think about the specifics of it. How incredible is it how expressive Mike is being just an eyeball?
Yeah.
Like how crazy is it how expressive he is through the whole movie, to the point that I don't know how often that's addressed.
I think it really helps that his eye is so big.
Yeah. And like all he really has is like the place where an eyebrow. He doesn't have an eyebrow, but where an eyebrow would be.
Mm-hmm.
I have the case here as like a visual cue. It's like, no, he does not have an eyebrow, just that place where it would be, and that's where a lot of his features come from.
Mm-hmm. And
Because
Billy
he's
Crystal's voice work really takes advantage of that expressiveness too.
Yeah. Have you heard about how Billy Crystal got hired?
No.
It's actually a really great story. Billy
Let me
Crystal.
guess, Billy Crystal told Conan.
Billy Crystal was supposed to be Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah.
and for a reason I can't remember, he turned it down. I don't know if it's because he didn't have faith or what. But when he saw Toy Story, he said that turning down Buzz was the mistake of his career.
Mm-hmm.
So when John Lasseter was putting this together and was casting it, Billy Crystal had no idea what it was. His wife just came to him and said, "John Lasseter's calling you. He's on the phone right now." And Billy Crystal picked up the phone and said, "Whatever it is, yes."
Hmm.
And it ended up being this.
I don't know if Billy Crystal would have been right for Buzz, though.
Yeah, I said I don't know if we're just so used to Tim Allen at this point, but it is hard to imagine.
Yeah, I don't. The original casting choice, I like where they were going by using Clint Eastwood and Jim Carrey, but those voices just don't fit. Like, who else is going to be Woody but Tom Hanks?
Yeah. And there's what else was I going to talk about with this? I guess we could talk about Goodman. if we're gonna
Yeah.
if we're gonna talk about Billy Crystal. It is interesting to me that Billy Crystal gets the top billing when Sully's kind of the main focus.
Yeah.
And that's another case of who the hell else was this gonna be?
Mm-hmm.
It was like and Goodman was just in The Emperor's New Groove the year before this, so he was already involved with Disney, so it just all aligned. like it
Plus,
was.
John Goodman's like that perfect combination of comforting but can become threatening very quickly.
Yeah. It's like we have we have Dan Connor and Walter here.
And I feel like I don't know if anybody does that better than Goodman.
He is. John Goodman is just invaluable as an actor and as a human being. And that's how much that comes through in Sully.
Mm-hmm.
Like Sully might as well be him.
Yeah. And it's sad that John Goodman he's never really sniffed an Oscar nomination.
Yeah, he's when you watch interviews with him, he's also kind of hard on himself. Like he's one of those people that just does not realize how great he actually is.
Goodman, I would put John Goodman on that list of actors that any movie he's in is going to be better because he's involved.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like when you think about the way Sully's portrayed here, where it's like, I mean, he's already kind of got that gentle giant vibe. But then when we actually start to see him interacting with Boo, where it's like he's somewhere in between a new father and like a babysitter.
Mm-hmm.
He's in like a middle ground of that.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like the scene where he has to take her to the bathroom and the way they do awkward situations like that. And it's like the way he just kind of has to uncomfortably stand outside is like such a weirdly human moment for a monster to have.
Yeah.
And the stuff when he's like when he's like trying to explain things to her in ways she'll understand.
Mm-hmm.
But then I love his delivery of "Oh, don't worry, I'm not going to scare you. I'm off duty."
I think it's another case too where it's the same with Billy Crystal. Like the way that Sully is animated with his facial expressions and stuff go very well with John Goodman's voice.
Yeah.
Like the last shot of the movie where like Sully is just so happy to see Boo. Like that facial expression fits perfectly somebody with John Goodman's warm, comforting voice throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy how much they can make animation with characters like this still seem so much like the people playing them.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's even though voice work is recorded separate, sometimes they don't do it that way, and I'm not sure completely if Billy Crystal and Goodman did their voice work separately. But like even if they did the voice work separately, the chemistry is there.
Yeah.
Like especially between them. Like I love just some of their interactions, like when he's talking about taking Boo to the bathroom and he says, "She can't go in there. This is the men's room." And just Mike's delivery of, "That is the weirdest thing you've ever said." There's a lot of great stuff that Billy Crystal has also that we didn't touch on. Like the breaking into song.
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously there's put that thing back where it came from, so help me. But I love the idea of when she's out of our hair comes back.
Mm-hmm.
What's great about that is obviously when he says that, and then they run into somebody and he has to do it again in song.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, because when you know the movie well enough, you're already laughing in advance when he says she's out of our hair normally.
Mm-hmm. Is it
And
just
then
me too, or with the scene of I think it's the first scene that Mike interacts with Roz. Could you not see that being a live action scene where Billy Crystal's interacting with somebody like Louise Fletcher or something?
I was just gonna say something very similar about a different scene. Where it's so easy to imagine him doing it in live action.
Yeah.
It's when Randall has him like tied up,
Mm-hmm.
and he says, "Say hello to the scream extractor," and he actually says hello to it. Like, that is something live action Billy Crystal would do. What do you think about some of the side characters we keep coming back to?
The classic is the big dude that keeps getting tackled by the I can't think of what they're called. I just keep calling them the AIM agents because they're just very similar to like AIM agents from Marvel.
Yeah, I remember having a bunch of those from like the fast food toys.
Yeah.
Also,
What are they
I
called?
also
Oh, the CDC, the Child Detection, or the CDA, the Child Detection Agency.
it's something like that. It was C something for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I love the news witnesses also.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also really just one of those cases where even if you just look in the background, there's some stuff that's not even addressed. That's just good stuff, like the monster that says bye to his wife and then he just flies away.
I love how the monsters in the news coverage, like especially after the restaurant incident, are very similar to the bank robbers in Tommy Boy, where they just embellish the story.
Yeah. And then there's I remember the line and the delivery, but I'm trying to think of what the context was. The guy that like comes out screaming, "I could have died." There's even a side character that's not even much of a character because they don't have a face. It's the intercom lady
Mm-hmm.
that announces the new scare record,
Mm-hmm.
and how it's Sully, then it goes to Randall, and then it goes back to Sully, and she just says, "Never mind." Oh man, we haven't even talked about Buscemi yet.
Or James Coburn.
Yeah.
Or Oz.
Coburn was perfect for this. I miss Coburn's voice.
Mhm.
Like, it's he's had so many great performances over a long career, but like the one thing I really miss is his fucking voice.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and the whole thing of before we really get into Waternoose, we think Randall's our main villain,
Yeah.
and he's genuinely kind of antagonistic the way he can turn invisible and the way he uses that to his advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no matter how many times I see it, that bathroom scene is always intense when he's hitting the doors.
Mm-hmm.
And it never fails to kill me when he does it and they're right there and he doesn't see them. And his comeuppance is hilarious as well. I believe that's where we get our
when he ends up in the trailer.
Yeah, I believe that's also where the Pizza Planet truck is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting how much they get like genuine suspense out of him.
Mm-hmm.
Everything he's capable of. Like, even the fight where they can't. So like they really used his advantage as much as they could.
Yeah. And his ability to like crawl around, like especially in the room with all the doors.
Yeah, and is it just me, or is he also even creepier in retrospect when we know how afraid of him Boo is?
Yeah.
Because like when Sully sees like the drawing and puts two and two together, and it's like, what is he doing when he scares her? Because because he's already kind of freaky looking.
Yeah.
Even when he's like hunched over pushing his little cart around. when he's straight up cheating, like cheating in broad daylight.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it has grown back on me since I had that period in 2012 where I was kind of worried if I wasn't that much of a fan anymore. But I also think that was a case where me and Owen had been at the theater watching movies like all day. Like I think it was the day Jack Reacher came out, and there were like 3, and we watched 2 movies in the afternoon, and then Jack Reacher, and then Monsters Inc.
Mm-hmm.
That could have had a lot to do with, like, I could have just been ready to go home by then. But
Isn't it crazy to think that could be like a completely bygone era?
I don't know if it will be entirely, because while some people have always been saying, streaming's the way to go now, there's a pretty significant group of people that really miss that experience right now. So you are talking about the theater experience, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this before. I think that there are movies that belong on a big screen. Like this week, I told you we've been watching Christmas movies. 2 nights ago, we watched The Polar Express. That's a theatrical experience.
Yeah, I've been trying to do that for a few years because they play that around this month every year, but I've never made it.
Mm-hmm. The Polar Express is the theatrical experience. I would say Avengers Endgame was a theatrical experience.
Yeah. Last I heard, Denis Villeneuve is fucking pissed about Dune.
Yeah. I would put Inception as a theatrical experience. There's some movies that just seeing them in that atmosphere makes them better.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not just the bigness of it. Sometimes it's like the crowd experience.
Yeah.
Or like something like Monsters Inc., for instance, like when Monsters Inc. first came out,
Mm-hmm.
and how much laughter can be contagious.
Yeah.
Like there's another joke that constantly kills me is it only happens twice, but you can still call it a running joke. The kind of bookend a joke of Mike almost getting to fame, but he's always blocked off.
Mm-hmm.
That's an A+ joke both times. Like it's like because I love the fact that I don't know if it would have been near as funny. It needed the build up. Like it's really funny at the start when the commercial's on, and right as he like turns to the camera, the logo just covers his face.
Mm-hmm.
That is laugh out loud funny. But because that was laugh out loud funny, him opening the box and he's covered by a barcode is falling out of your fucking chair funny.
And it's also great because they knew that was the perfect amount of times to do that joke. If they would have done it again, it would have probably won out its welcome.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly how jokes like that need to play out. Do one at the beginning and then one at the end.
Yeah.
Because animated movies are especially bad about they get attached to one joke and they're like, oh, audiences will love this one thing, so let's keep doing that thing throughout the whole thing.
I think what also helps that joke work is it's done with 2 different mediums. It's done in video and in print.
Yeah. because we've already gotten the commercial joke, so it may not totally be in your head that joke is going to come back because now we're talking about a magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd almost think with their mediums those would be in reverse, and the first thing he'd want to then on TV.
Mm-hmm.
But the way he just gets screwed over twice. And honestly, you know what sells the joke both times is that he's never upset. He's totally happy.
Yeah.
It's like that's the perfect twist on that joke both times.
Mm-hmm.
Like Sully, after the commercial, Sully is so ready to comfort him. And the whole idea of that look on his face that looks like heartbreak until we realize it's shock that something so fortunate could happen to him.
Mm-hmm.
It makes him so endearing.
And once again, do you not see that as being a possible joke in a live-action Billy Crystal movie?
Totally. It's basically, he kind of went through that in Thermal from the Train, when he was always this close to the right amount of success, and it just kept screwing him over.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
I mean, it definitely feels like Mike Wazowski was written as a character that would be played by Billy Crystal.
yeah, because it's one of those cases where if he didn't have the Buzz regret, I'm not sure who it ever could have been.
Yeah.
But once again, that is another case of that could always also be chalked up to we're just so used to that, it's kind of hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's even we're at that place now to where we can still say it's hard to imagine anybody, so because they fit it so well. I do genuinely don't think that it would have been as solely as a character. Probably could have worked with other actors, but it would never have reached the levels that John Goodman reached.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there anything else about Monsters Inc. you have?
Not that I can think of. But like you said, it's one of those two where the side characters end up being just as fun.
Yeah.
Like Roz's dry delivery with everything.
I love that Roz's character has a twist.
I love not only that, but the twist doesn't change her delivery of things.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like a verbal Kent thing where, like, she's actually really expressive. She's still mundane as fuck.
I'm imagining the shot of Verbal Kent when he starts walking normally. It's just Roz slithering. She does slither, doesn't she? I think so.
I don't know if we ever see her move.
I think the most we get is that shot when she walks into the room and it's revealed who she actually is.
Oh, okay.
And did we ever mention Jennifer Tilly?
No. But I love how, like, the snakes on her head are also, like, a personality.
Oh, yeah.
Or how they, like, respond to her emotions.
Yeah.
Like, when she gets mad, they start hissing. It's such a simple little thing, but it's fun. Especially the fact that it's always directed at Mike.
Yeah. And she's one of those characters. You know who Jennifer Tilly is in this?
Mm-hmm.
She's Laura Flynn Boyle in Wayne's World.
Yeah.
all the way down to like the neck brace where she has like the cone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just stuff keeps happening to her. Though in fairness to her, Mike does seem to have genuine feelings for her, unlike Wayne and Laura Flynn Boyle. So she's got that going for her.
Yeah.
I guess if there's any other things to touch on here, really briefly, it would be what do you think of Monsters Universe?
I think Monsters University is more along the lines of what you fear Monsters Inc. was becoming.
Yeah, because I saw it in the theater, and that's the last time I saw it, and I don't remember any. There's one thing I remembered. I loved that Randall was nerdy and he went by Randy. That's really the only thing I remember. And I think Charlie Day was one of them, wasn't he? One of the new characters.
I only love this because of recent TV I've been watching, but the guy with the mustache in the fraternity, like the older guy, you remember who I'm talking about?
Like vaguely, I think.
He reminds me of David Cross in Arrested Development.
Hasn't I'm trying to remember if David Cross has ever done like a. Surely David Cross has done a voice, and not just the caramel in the M&M commercials.
Well, while you do the introduction to Little Monsters. I will look this up because I'm pretty sure he has.
So as far as Little Monsters
David
goes,
Cross could have probably been Mike Wazowski.
wow, yeah. Yeah, and I honestly, I don't know that much would have changed. Like his deliveries would have been probably just about there.
Oh my God! With the conversation we were having before off camera, David Cross could be David Paymer's character.
Yeah, for some reason, we before the cameras came on, we were recasting City Slickers for some reason. Oh,
Yeah,
because we were talking. It's because we were talking about because Billy Crystal's in this and Daniel Stern's in Little Monsters. So
David Cross is Minion in Megamind.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that has to be what I was thinking of.
he's Crane and Kung Fu Panda.
Oh yeah. I knew he had to have because his voice is perfect for this kind of thing. So, does this bring us to Little Monsters?
I think so. I'm still looking to see what other voices he's done. Man, we were so wrong about David Cross not doing voices.
I
He's
don't
done some on
really.
TV too.
I don't know that I have a first memory of Little Monsters. Just for the longest time, I remember it playing on movie channels, and I would just kind of catch it here and there. And I was always really intrigued by it. And it wasn't really that. Interestingly enough, Little Monsters is much more terrifying to me now than it was when I was a kid. Like for some reason, the designs of the monsters didn't really get to me, but older, I look at them and it's like, this is insane and disturbing. And but what's interesting about that is Little Monsters is also kind of hidden.
Hold on. I have to stop you. I found the ultimate David Cross voice. There's a Scooby-Doo thing called Night of the Living Doo, where Scooby-Doo and Mystery Inc. gang pick up a hitchhiking Gary Coleman, and the Mystery Machine breaks down multiple times, and they run into David Cross, who voices himself. And there's a picture of him, animated David Cross.
That, with no clues, I would have been able to guess exactly who that was.
I want that picture of animated David Cross framed on my wall. I've always been a fan of David Cross, though, ever since Small Soldiers.
Okay.
And I love him in Men in Black 2.
Yeah. He's funnier in Men in Black 2 than he is in the first one.
I would agree with that.
Where was I going with Little Monsters now?
You were talking about how you didn't really have a first memory of it.
Yeah, I was getting to it's shit. The idea that it has, despite the fact that it has really sort of dark undertones to it, and this really sort of eventually kind of a dark atmosphere to it. Little Monsters can also be really immature, but it's because the monsters are immature, particularly Maurice. There is an interesting moment at the beginning that has always had me very curious about how to take the events of the movie itself. Because I feel like we were talking about something recently about something fitting like a kind of like a dream scenario, and how like the Wizard of Oz characters see something in their real life, and then it kind of moves into their fantasy by the actors, it being the same actors in different roles between reality and the dream world. Do you think there's any significance I'm not picking up on that Rick Dukeman, who plays Snick, is the TV host on the TV when Fred Savage is watching it at the beginning?
I never noticed that.
You never noticed that was it?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I still wonder now if there's any significance to that, or if there's any like indication, because there's no real indication this is some big dream. Any way you could take that is cut down by the final scene on the beach,
Yeah.
Where there's no way this is some sort of prolonged dream sequence.
I think you could also chalk that to the real world consequences of the stuff the monsters do.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I don't think Brian's breaking into all those houses.
Yeah. That'd be an interesting twist.
Mm-hmm.
But there is something here. Before we even get into the monster world, what do you think about just the everyday life of Brian and what we see of it?
He gets pretty shit on.
Yeah, because I do like the dynamic of having Ben Savage play his actual brother.
Mm-hmm.
Like and we get moments like when when they're on the bus and Brian thinks he's the one that's been messing everything up. So the way he just picks his lunch up and throws it out the window. Which of course brings Devin Rattray into the movie, who was Buzz in Home Alone, is the bully here.
So reuniting with Daniel Stern.
Yeah, actually, this would have been the first time around.
Hmm.
And I believe in both movies they don't share any screen time. so,
No.
so speaking of that, what kind of vibes do you get from Daniel Stern's character? There's something, I don't know, there's something a little uneasy about this to me.
Mm-hmm.
In the scene in particular that does it is that, and maybe it's just the context of the scene and it's not really meant to be anything, but there's just always been something really off to me when it's after he opens the cabinet and the ice cream falls on him.
Yeah.
And when Stern's walking towards him and saying, like, you need to know the difference between right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that he's just walking out of the room. But when he's walking like that and Brian backs away from him, Brian looks legitimately terrified of him.
Yeah.
And like that's always been like, what exactly is going on in this family? Because really the whole thing seems to be that Brian needs to get away from this. Because obviously they build it up in an easy to digest way that the parents are fighting and they're contemplating divorce.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like how we got to this is what's glossed over because the movie's PG.
Yeah, like is his treatment of Brian one of the factors?
Yeah. And the fact that Eric never seemed, I mean, obviously that's just kind of the cliche that the little brother never gets in trouble, the older brother always does, but it seems to be in a particular way in this family that Eric kind of coasts by and Brian is like the culprit. Now, obviously, it also seems like, Brian might be a bit of a troublemaker in the way that apparently he's okay with throwing his brother's lunch out the school bus window and sneaking into the living room with his peanut butter and onion sandwiches in the middle of the night. But if Stern is one of those dads that takes the punishment too far.
As an older brother too, I can understand like when him throwing out his lunch out the window there. If that's the case, there's probably a lot of resentment there.
Yeah. Which makes it all more profound when he has to save him in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's something I'm kind of saving to talk about with this movie. Because I want to kind of talk about the movie on its surface. And then something else. When I talked about we're going to go into dark places with this.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get into that, what do you think about Howie Mandel in this? Were you gonna say something?
I was thinking. It feels very. I know this movie came first, but it feels very like Rick Mayall and Drop Dead Fred.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And I was also thinking.
I could also see it as like a child-friendly Beetlejuice.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with the way that he kind of seeks Maurice's help in causing havoc.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was gonna say something about Howie Mandel's performance, but to mention that, I would also have to mention the makeup in this movie is kind of incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if it gets credit for that much, but it probably should.
One of my favorite makeup moments that's really cool. Actually, turns out to be a funny joke too. It's whenever Maurice gets mad at Snick, and Snick said, because he says, "You know what happens when I get mad?" And then it happens, and Snick says, "What was that?" And he says, "I don't know. That's what happens when I get mad."
I think to get the quote all the way down, I think what makes it even funnier is that he's using the word upset.
Oh, is it upset? Okay. Oh yeah, that's just what happens when I get upset.
And there's so much, like, there's some features to Snick. Like, no matter how many times I've seen this movie, which is like a billion, I see new features, like new subtle features on Snick I didn't notice before.
One of the glaring ones, especially you wouldn't see today, is he smokes.
Yeah.
Like that adds to his threat level, like off the bat.
Yeah, and the thing I wanted to bring up about Howie Mandel that's really interesting is it's a dead giveaway that Maurice is Howie Mandel because of his voice.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, he's so manic. Because I mean, I don't know if you've ever watched Howie Mandel stand up from back in the day.
Mm-mm.
That's basically what he was. Basically Maurice out of the makeup is what his stand up was. Just really, really manic and all over the place. He would use props.
Uh-huh.
Um, he would do stuff like he would say he would just stop in the middle of his routine and then just say, "Oh hey, I've got a little gag for you. Are you ready?" And he would just do stuff like that. But the thing here is that when I look at Howie Mandel, especially now, it's hard to realize that is Maurice. Like, it's something that's always been hard for me to digest, that is Maurice. They feel like two totally different entities, despite him sounding like and acting like Howie Mandel. But I don't like between his performance and the makeup, especially, feels like there's such a distance between the two that when I see like Deal or No Deal Howie Mandel, my mind cannot even register that that's Maurice. I mean, I don't know if it's because he has to be more downplayed as a game show host, but
Because you get
significantly more
it's the same
downplayed.
thing with him on America's Got Talent. If you've seen clips of it.
Yeah. And another thing about Maurice's manic way about himself, are we under the impression that the adults can't hear the monsters? Because that's never addressed, but I feel like there's no way that's not the case.
No, because Maurice is just so loud.
And it's like, it would be the great thing about what Howie Mandel's doing also is that I feel like in any other context, this performance and character would be so annoying. But it's like that's the character's point. Like, that's his purpose, is to be way too into everything he's doing,
Mm-hmm.
where he's basically out of his own control. So when we get the actual scenes where he's like actually kind of grounded, when he like confesses to Brian that he doesn't have any friends except for him, and that's the reason he's always bothering him,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like trying to help him through the whole divorce thing. And the fact that adds a gravitas to the scenes when he kind of feels betrayed by Maurice when he sees the extent of the cruelty of the monsters when they're trying to scare the baby.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like those moments that actually work emotionally, because if I remember correctly, those scenes are pretty close together, of them having a real heart to heart and then him realizing that the monsters are much crueler than he initially realized.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole thing where we see that Maurice is basically just under the power of Snick, who's under the power of Boy. So really, Maurice is just doing whatever he can to not get him old, practically.
So are we under the assumption that in the first Turtles movie, the Foot Clan just took over the monster's hideout?
Because of what it looks like.
Yeah.
This might be Did you catch all that? I got the internet connection warning again.
No, might be what?
This might be the best transition for what I was going to go into. Because this is kind of elaborate. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Not that I can think of.
I would say we're going to get to this, but I do think it's worth mentioning. In his tiny, tiny, tiny screen time, I love Frank Whaley in this so much. He is so insanely creepy and so insanely sinister in like 2 minutes, to where the whole movie is building up to his character. And he has to make that pay off when we see him.
Do you think Boyd left the monster world and ran the hotel in vacancy?
That seems very likely. or Brett survived, and it's but not to mention this was the same year as Field of Dreams, so showing range. And there's that really creepy shot where he's near Boyd's stairway and gets in trouble with Snick, and we see a very tiny silhouette of Boyd watching this from the giant doors. That shot has always been terrifying because he seems so far away, despite the fact that we know he's like all seeing. And he's so shrouded in mystery. That's a lot of build up for an actor that's going to have a 2-minute performance, if that.
Isn't that's what happens when I get upset scene in there too?
That's somewhere. That's after Brian gets away, after the baby thing, I think. And that scene also. Almost everything we're talking about ties into what I need to go into. As I say, not what I want to go into, what I need to go into. Now remember, I did say we were going to go into dark places.
And this is after we've already talked about the potential child abuse going on.
Oh yeah, it actually ties into that. So, we've mentioned this before, I'm really not much into fan theories. I think most of the time they're a reach, and they're kind of a waste of time. And ever so often, like every now and then, in a very occasional instance, one fan theory will just completely make sense to the point that you can't see it any other way. The reason I'm hesitant to go into this is because I've only heard this once, which is weird to me because after I heard it, even having grown up with this movie and seen it a billion times, I don't know that I can watch this movie the way I once did after this theory I heard. Because there were some aspects that the fan theory I saw didn't go into that I was able to add up myself watching it back with this in mind. And it just kept adding up to the point that I feel like there's no way the filmmakers didn't mean this. Like, there's no way it's not this. Where the whole movie is an allegory.
Okay.
Is any of this ringing a bell yet?
No.
All right, I'm going to put it in a simple sentence and then go into every detail I can remember. Both the fan theory I heard and the own conclusions that I drew. The whole movie being an allegory for a child predator ring.
Okay.
Okay, so we have Brian, who's in this really bad situation at home, possibly being abused, not in that sense, but in the kind of traditional sense by his father, Daniel Stern, who's like way, way too strict, to put it in a simple term. So, especially with the age he's at and living in a house like that, he's going to be vulnerable.
Especially with the divorce coming in, it's becoming a broken home.
Yeah. So he meets a man-child like Maurice, who wants to take him to this underground world where you don't have to worry about parents, you don't have to worry about rules, and everything is our little secret.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying, this place is amazing. This place is going to blow your mind. This is the best place in the world. And it sounds like he's describing fucking Candyland. And they go down there.
Not DiCaprio's version of the board game.
Correct. And when they go down there, it's this really decrepit place that's just not appealing. It looks dirty. It looks assembled out of wood and cardboard boxes. There is nothing appealing here. It is a disgusting underworld. But Brian has basically been gaslit into thinking it's this great magical place.
Mm-hmm.
So when he goes down there and he sees what this place looks like, and we're like, what the hell is this? Brian's response is, this is incredible. Because Maurice has gaslit him into thinking it's an incredible place. So now he's comfortable here where all these monsters are. And then we just get random little lines here and there that just kind of, once you're already into this theory, just kind of make you say, like when he's talking about Kristen and he's upset when Maurice tears up her homework. And Maurice says something on the lines, like his exact line, I believe, is never get emotionally involved with the victim.
Mm-hmm.
It's like lines like that immediately feel off. There's one particular line that I just never acknowledged. Like, never acknowledged. And then as soon as I heard this line becomes so weird. And it's like, okay, if this isn't the context, what the hell does that mean? Do you remember Arnold? The monster with his head in like his hands that Snick tears his head off?
Yeah.
Remember the dialogue in that scene?
Not offhand.
Snick is pissed off and torturing him because Arnold was supposed to do Boy a favor. And he said, you didn't give Boy what he wanted. And I had to go back. I put the subtitles on. I kept rewinding it just to make sure I heard this line. Arnold says the reason he couldn't do Boy's favor is because his knees hurt. It's like, okay, take this out of the context of the allegory. What the hell does that line mean?
That's a good point.
And then you look at the fact that Boy is in the Catholic school uniform. I mean, that just seems to be explicitly stating something.
Yeah.
And then here's the thing is, and I feel like I'm missing some, but the big thing here as well is when this predatory thing is happening, it's in the dark. Oh, there's the moment when the scene where Maurice is like, you know what happens when I get upset.
Mm-hmm.
And Snick is saying, he was becoming one of us. He knows our secrets. He can let out our secret unless we do something about him.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the whole thing. You can talk about how child abuse is a vicious circle where if a child is abused, more often than not, they grow up to be an abuser. And what happens when you stay with the monsters long enough in this movie, you become one.
Yeah.
So you think about all this and you think about like thinking of it as like an entire ring. The reason these things can happen in real life is because they happen in the shadows and because they happen in the dark and in secret. What is it that weakens the monsters and ultimately kills Boy?
Light.
Shining a light on them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, am I missing anything?
No, that's a pretty heavy theory.
And it's like, I'm not even sure I can see the movie in another way now. It's like, once you see all of that, it's like, how is it anything else? There is no way all of that is just a theory.
Yeah.
And like I said, not all of this was in the fan theory I read. A lot of it is I watched it back with that in mind, and I saw more things.
Mm-hmm.
Like he didn't the theory I saw didn't even mention the line about Arnold and his knees. It's like, and I know usually these fan theories are really reaching, but it's like it makes way too much sense.
Yeah.
And it's like it makes you see the movie in a totally different way. And that's also the idea of the fact that when they're doing the thing, like once they have Brian in their grasp, when they're like, hey, this is the fun thing we do. And Brian agrees, oh yeah, this is really fun. It's mischievous and our secret, but it's fun. But it's like when we get to the baby scene and it's sudden, Brian has an epiphany and he's like, wait a minute, something is off. This is wrong. And then that's when Snick starts to panic and say, we need to do something about him because our secret will get out. There's something, like you were saying, there's something really fucking heavy in here.
Yeah.
And like I said, I feel like there's even more stuff I'm not thinking of, but that's all I can think of in the moment. But and then I guess if you want to take it a step further, like I don't know if this was entirely, because like the whole spotlight scenario was in like what, the 2001 area, when like a really big like public revelation happened in regards to like the Catholic churches and stuff like that. The idea that journalism and writing is what brought this to light. So you take the scene that's otherwise pretty ridiculous when they end up in the Star Wars trash room of stuffed animals,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea of making light from pencils.
Yeah.
It's like you watch that and you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is this bullshit? But then it's like pencils, journalism and writing brought the light.
You're skipping over the fact, too, that let's think about it. Their punishment room is filled with stuffed animals.
Yeah. Like everything there is like made to look like a play place when it's a prison.
Yeah.
It's like you think it just gets deeper and deeper the more you go into it. and then eventually Maurice gets his redemption and says, like, he knows that Brian needs to get out of this and be able to live his life without the trauma that this underworld could bring him, and not get him stuck in this kind of world, in this kind of environment. Because I had always wondered for a long time why there was like a big goodbye at the end. Because Maurice even says, where there's a bed, there's a way, but it's like they're doing a goodbye. They're setting up that he will never see Maurice again. And it's like, it's almost like Maurice was kind of doing that as comfort by saying, like, technically I'll always be there, but it's like, it's never spoken at all. But it's like they come to a mutual agreement that if Brian keeps hanging out with Maurice, he's never going to grow up the way that he should. He's never going to be able to move on from his childhood unless he leaves Maurice behind. And Maurice knows this also. Which makes the emotion in that scene feel really genuine. And it's like, this is a really silly and stupid movie on its surface. But taking all of this into account makes me see the movie in a whole different way.
It does leave a lot to unpack.
And that's the thing, is I've only seen that theory, and it only partially touched on what we've talked about. I would almost think this is something everybody has equated at this point, because it seems so obvious.
Yeah, it does seem very plausible.
But I've only heard this theory partially once. So I don't know if other people have picked up on this or what, but yeah. And on a lighter note, talking about the end of the movie, surely for a lot of people my age, I imagine, and maybe yours, I'm grateful that this movie was the introduction. This movie was my introduction to Talking Heads.
Yeah.
That's such a fucking awesome song. and it actually fits the movie really well.
Yeah.
So that's what I was talking about when I said we were gonna go to dark places with little monsters. To the point that I don't know if there's anything else I have to add. So is there anything else you want to say? Oh, and I guess you could also point out the way Boy is designed, where he's got a really innocent-looking, boyish face. It's literally his name.
Mm-hmm.
And the second the light is shined on him, he pulls off his innocent face, and he's a grotesque monster underneath.
Twice.
Yeah, it just seems so obvious.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
You could
And of
also
course,
say that when the light shines on them, the way they disappear like that, it's like when the light shines on them, they become a ghost.
yeah, and then in Boy's case, if the light is bright enough, it will kill him.
Yeah.
So if this is what the writers were going for, they're fucking geniuses. So I kind of really hope that. But like I said, even if that wasn't the intention, I don't think I will ever be able to stray away from this when I watch this movie.
I just want to see the look on somebody's face when they ask you, they're like, so what do you think of fan theories? And you're like, well, I think they're mostly useless. And they're like, and they're like, well, which one do you subscribe to? Little Monsters is a pedophile ring.
I can't remember anything about it, but I remember you reading it. There was that one amazing one about Vegas Vacation.
Yeah, I don't remember what all was involved though.
It was so layered and so precise. It was perfect. And I can't remember anything about it. So is that it?
I think so. I don't really know where we could go from there. I mean,
Okay,
you kind of put us through a door that only has one exit.
I'm really glad you agree, because I was really afraid of going through that whole thing, and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
That's not what I saw at all.
Like I said, the closer you watch it, I feel like there's probably more.
Probably.
So yeah, that's what's going on. So so I don't know if we have another one. We don't really have another one planned, but I'm assuming we'll figure that out at some point. In the meantime, I don't know if Owen and Ashley have anything planned, but this will be my 60-second video in a row. So I've still got to do Mank and Tenet this week. But apart from that, I don't think I have anything else planned video-wise.
What the hell is Mank?
That's Fincher's Citizen Kane movie.
Ah.
With Gary Oldman. And there's other new releases, and Wonder Woman and Soul, and I think a couple of other things come out on Christmas, so I'll have to touch on those. But yeah, I'm gonna be a little more spread out than I've been over the past 2 months. So I hope. So in the meantime, I guess we'll figure out whatever our next one is.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, the discussion will be more lighthearted. It's like
that might have been the darkest conversation we've had on camera.
And it's a video that started with Monsters Inc.
Yeah, and talking about Billy Crystal being in the real life situations he's put in.
You see why I wanted to do Monsters Inc. first.
Yeah. It'd have been kind of hard to transition into Monsters Inc. from there.
So anyways, let's talk about Monsters Inc. after that.
So anyway, that John Ratzenberger, what a character.
Yeah, him and his snow cones.
We didn't even touch on him either.
Yeah. Well, it's Pixar. He comes with the territory. We know he's there.
Yeah.
So I guess that's pretty much it for now. Oh, and I was probably going to do a couple more. I resurrected the Emily Blunt thing with Wild Mountain Time, and I think there's going to be a couple more I do of those. She had a White Whale movie to me for a long time. Where I just couldn't find it anywhere, and it's like streaming on Amazon right now, so I might have to take advantage of that.
Yeah, you might.
So that's pretty much probably what the rest of December is going to be. And I heard we're supposed to do an awards video, but I'm not sure when that will be. But there's definitely a lot more to discuss than we thought there would be earlier this year, so that should be fun.
Yeah.
All right, so
I don't have any Kathy Bates predictions for you this year.
Yet there's still 2 months movies have to qualify.
I don't know that I'll ever get more accurate than I saw a still shot of Kathy Bates and was like, "Yep."
Yeah, and you weren't even paying attention to the race like at all.
And you all doubted me when she missed. Was it the Globes that she missed, or SAG?
I can't remember now. I think she missed SAG, but she got in Globe, and then yeah.
Didn't she get in BAFTA too?
She might have missed that too, because I remember it being kind of a Hail Mary shot when I went ahead and predicted her to get in.
Yeah, because I told you to stick to your guns, or rather, stick to my guns.
Seeing the movie helped too, where like every single scene she has in Richard Jewell was basically an Oscar clip. So yeah. So anything else to add?
No, I think that's it. Now that you've broken open the Little Monsters child pedophile ring. Where did you see that theory?
What's that?
Where did you first see that theory?
I don't even remember now. It might have been it might have been a Reddit thing, which I hate saying because Reddit is the fucking absolute worst place to go for movie discussion. So and that's any part of it, but you know, that's it, whatever. But yeah, so if you don't have anything else to add, I don't think I do either. So I think that might be it.
That's it.
All right.